all the long-term residents here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Wendy Reinhardt.
Hi, it's Dave Reinhardt. I'm not sure how to fix that, but a couple things. One is that as far as Christian not being a resident here, I'm sure the township would pay consulting fees to have a resident expert come in. And yes, he's associated with Patrick, but I believe he's a so-called expert witness in this case. With experience that we would all need to make an educated decision about this. As far as high density development and leaving the township county open, the high density development is what you can see from the property that most of us are focusing on. Patrick's is Westchester Farms, and there is a demand for high density. I have never seen anything like how dense that is. And what is being proposed here as a tangent to the open space is something that isn't giant houses, but smaller properties on a piece of land and leaving the rest of the land open as opposed to pushing it full of huge houses. I appreciate Dan's statement about what we can do, you know, if we made it 10-acre parcels instead of 2 or 1. But in lieu of that, which will not happen because we live on a 2-acre parcel because 10 acres was, you could split that up. So let's not shut everybody else out because we have what we want right now. That's about it.
Thank you, David. Not seeing any other hands in the air. We'll restrict the further conversation to board members. And I'll exercise my privilege of kicking off the discussion. I've let people know how I evaluate an open space preservation ordinance. Compliance with state law, minimum chance of being sued, and effectiveness. And Christian and Patrick made a good argument for effectiveness. The overwhelming evidence from over 20 years of experience in 1,200 townships is that if is that adequate incentive works. Early in this century, Michiganders had to take a bus tour to the East Coast to see how open space and farmland preservation could be done. What they saw was that it could be done, and the outcome was not just cool, but spectacular. A farmland preservation program in Michigan called Public Act 116 was passed in 1974. I bought some land from my neighbor that was in Public Act 116. The program was not very successful. It gave some tax credits for 10 years and it was renewable. But the Open Space Preservation Act of 110 was passed in 2006 and has been successful in Michigan. We've got lots of documents covering the history of this process. We've got a lot of comments. Lost my paper. 23 or more comments from Rob Thal. 9 of them were correcting typographical errors. The first and last comment was to put it in ordinance form. Patrick mentioned the sewer and water issue. But to make a long story short, I will move that we retain Carlisle Wortman Associates to correct the identified typographical errors, put the proposed ordinance in ordinance form, advise the township on how to handle water and sewer, and advise the township on the potential effectiveness of the ordinance. Would I have a second to my motion? Motion dies for lack of a second.
I'll second. I
Thank you,
second.
Sandy. Discussion.
I just have one thing to say.
Kurt had his hand in the air.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Rod.
Well, I just, I know what Dan said, and I had already planned to say something else before him, but as a board member, I think that it's kind of unethical for a supervisor and a resident to work together on an ordinance that will benefit that residence. Just my 2 cents worth.
Kurt,
Yes, Dave, thank you, Dave. Your motion talks about the ordinance. Which, is that the ordinance as it came from the planning commission to the board?
no, as it came from Robert Thal to the board.
I'm not sure I understand
Well, what I've labeled version 3.
oh,
It
okay.
got sent to Buckman, Sparks, Thal, Seaver, and Kaufman. They returned it with 23 comments. That's what I'm proposing. We refer to Carlisle Wortman to put into ordinance form, correct the typographical errors, and advise us on water and sewer and effectiveness.
So personally, you know, we, the Board of Trustees, we directed the Planning Commission to go ahead and make the OSPD compliant with state law. And between Thal and the Planning Commission, I believe they did that. And they presented that back to the board and said, here's what I think the board should approve. We had some additional questions about it. So we took it on as a board to go ahead and review that. I think, you know, in hindsight, what we should have done is we should have approved what it was that the Planning Commission did and gave to us, because their charge was to make it compliant with law. And so, you know, basically for the last 6 months, we continue to be not compliant with state law, as I understand it. So I think we should have passed it at the time, and then we could have talked about separate issues, and we could have talked about making them, you know, if we wanted to make changes to it. Instead, what we did is we sort of delayed because we thought we might be able to fine tune it. For me, the biggest issue is the density bonus. You don't have to have a density bonus in order to, you know, to make this ordinance compliant with state law. I believe what the Planning Commission delivered to us was a 10% bonus, but in version 3, what I'm looking at, it seems to be a 20% bonus. And that's sort of where I struggle with this whole thing. You know, I don't see a need for a density bonus. I don't think we need to be incentivizing developers to use this ordinance by allowing them to cram more homes, you know, in the corner of this lot. You know, as we all know, the closer the homes get together, the more problems it can create. You have to have more variances on setbacks, and you know, then you start getting into the problems with neighbors, the closer together you are. We see that with the short-term rental. You know, if you're out in the middle of a farm field, nobody's complaining that you're doing short-term rentals. But if your houses are all spaced, you know, within 10 feet of each other, all of a sudden what your neighbor does has a big impact on your property. So I think increasing the density bonus, it just opens us up to more potential issues in the future. Like Ed Blissick was saying, this is not a township that's being overrun with development, and we need to quickly try and preserve some open space. The Waterloo Recreation Area takes up a considerable portion of Sylvan Township. I've always stated that the Fiat Chrysler Proving Grounds, that creates there's a lot of open space there. We already have a lot of open space in the township, and I don't see us being overrun by developers trying to cram subdivisions in on every last 10-acre parcel of open space. Now, some people will say, well, yeah, but you're not looking down 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road. Well, the ordinance that we put in effect today can always be modified, right? So, at this point, why do we feel there's a need to have a density bonus? I would just as soon do away with the density bonus and let the open spaces preservation ordinance do what it was designed to do. And that was to, if you have 20 acres, you're allowed 10 homes, put 10 homes in one corner. And then people can look at the open space. I can see that. I don't see any advantage to taking the 10 homes that you've put in the corner and then try and squeeze 11 or 12 homes in there. That only helps the developer. It's what it's doing is it's creating incentive for developers. And we're not at that point in this township. If someday we feel like, hey, all our open space is quickly disappearing, maybe then you do need a density bonus to get developers to take advantage of this ordinance. But so far, there hasn't really been anybody that I know of, other than Patrick, that has expressed an interest in, clustering homes in one corner to preserve some open space. State law says we have to do it, so we do it. We provide the ordinance, but the density bonus is where I have issues with it.
Thank you, Kurt. I see a couple of citizens with their hands in the air. There'll be no public comment until the end of the discussion
I
by
can't
the
hear
board.
a damn thing.
I guess I'll say my piece again. I've been watching open space preservation for 20 years. I attended the Ultimate Open Space Preservation Conference in Lansing, Michigan. We're not talking about the state recreation area. All of a sudden I can think of Pinckney, but I can't think of ours. This is clustering homes to prevent the type of development that scatters 20 or 50 homes all over 100 acres with large lawns, long driveways, lots of public roads. That increases costs for the
I
township,
can't hear anybody.
for the community. We want less impervious surfaces, and that even includes gravel driveways. If we cluster homes, we reduce infrastructure costs. The advantages, I'm not a good advocate for the advantages. Christian and the professionals like at Cartman Grant do a much better job, but I've been convinced, and what I've seen in my own neighborhood is that with adequate incentives, landowners may go to the trouble to cluster homes, reduce costs, and increase open space and farmland preservation. This has been successful in many townships throughout the state. A number of townships and a number of counties have gone so far as to pass millages and then buy development rights from landowners. I'd like to see Township or Linden Township or Sylvan Township to do this. Well, I'd like to see Linden or anybody else do it. The purchase of development rights has been a very effective program. But this program, as Christian said, doesn't cost us a dime and still can be effective preserving open space. Yes, it's not open space open to the public. It just preserves wildlife habitat, woodlots, views. I can think of a subdivision in a sense just across Old US 12 here, where you drive in and it's acres and
Still
acres
can't hear a thing going on.
with one house, lots of lawn, long private roads or private driveways. And I think there's a better way. And I think the ordinance that I've presented and that I have moved that we retain Cartman Grant to refine would be a positive step for all of Sylvan Township. I recognize that some members of our citizenry are dead set against it. And unfortunately, the ones that think that it would be a very good idea aren't here, other than Patrick and Christian and I. But by the same token, we have a track record in the state of Michigan that this type of ordinance works with adequate incentives. Thank you.
So if I
Kathleen,
could, okay. So I agree with Trustee Kosick in a way. I think we obviously didn't handle this right in the fall. We should have passed or rejected or sent back to Planning Commission, and instead we let it linger. And that's kind of embarrassing. So I agree with that. I differ, however, on the bonus density, and I don't see a problem with allowing a bonus density. We need to have this ordinance to be compliant, so we might as well make it attractive. It's something, if the developers are coming in, it's something in our toolbox that we can say, this is something that you could choose. And hopefully, this would preserve more green space than a traditional development would. So I am not opposed to a bonus density. I'm not opposed to a 20% bonus density, but also, willing to talk about that. I think it's important that we get something attractive, because I think it's important we be ahead of the curve. If we wait until there's a lot of developers knocking on our door, it's taking us a long time to get this so far. And we can see a lot of development is coming into Sylvan. It's along the water sewer line. It's closer to the city, but it's happening. And I think the growth is coming out this way. And I think Chelsea and Sylvan is a very attractive community for people. So I think it's helpful to have a variety of options. But I think it's important that we think about this now, so we're ready. If developers do come, we have something that's attractive rather than just platting something out and having all your cookie cutter homes.
thank you, Kathleen. Any other comments from the board?
I like Karen Woolham's analogy of what a farm looks like, where you have a huge plot of land, a big plot of land, the farmhouse and all the buildings are clustered there together. And that's kind of how, I think that's a great description of what I see clustering homes together would look like. It would be sort of reminiscent of actually of a farm. I looked at a couple of subdivisions, I guess, that are clustered like that. And, depending upon the kind of house that goes in there, it can look like Westchester Farms that everybody keeps referring to, but with the houses all clustered together. Or they can, if they have smaller lots, I don't think anyone is going to buy a house there because they can't make their lot any bigger. So I think that whoever goes there is going to move into something like that for a reason. And it's actually, I would like to have more property, but I can't take care of it. But if I lived someplace where those duties were shared, it would certainly be a lot more fun. That's it.
Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, I can, next, Kurt. I grew up in Detroit. Our houses were so close together, we could just barely get a car between them. And it was fine. I grew up where I could walk to stores, walk to school. Nowadays, they call that new urbanism. But I grew up in it and loved it. I also love living out here. I live on 10 acres. I've bought another 70. I'll be putting it under a conservation easement so that it'll never be developed. I don't need the open space preservation to preserve my land. But I think the open space preservation ordinance would be a good tool to have in our toolbox. Kurt?
Yeah, well, there's no disagreement that that this ordinance should be in our toolbox. State law says it has to be in the toolbox. The questions that we have are sort of deal with the details of this ordinance. You can shape the ordinance many different ways to create what you want. There's a couple other factors. Like I said, I'm opposed to the density bonus. The other thing is we have had legal advice. Township Council has advised us not to make any major changes with this ordinance as long as we have a lawsuit in play that deals with trying to cram more homes in open space. So we do have a legal concern here. Anything we do is does go against our legal advice. If we insist on having the density bonus be as high as it is, then I would consider that a major change. And I think it would need to go back to the Planning Commission, per procedure. If we don't accept what the Planning Commission gave to us and we decide that we are going to make major changes to it, then it has to go back to the Planning Commission for review. So, I think we also need to consider those items.
Next, Kathy. Rob Thal commented on the ordinance that had increased incentive and did not suggest that it needed to go back to the Planning Commission. The only item he suggested needed to go back to the Planning Commission was the water and sewer item. In a meeting that I attended, I don't remember if I was supervisor or not. I don't think I was. Robert Thal said these decisions are the board's decisions. They're policy decisions. As long as we stay within the scope of the public hearings, we can do whatever we want. And he did not suggest that any other item needed to go back to the Planning Commission other than the sewer and water one. Kathy?
I was just going to say that in regards to your motion, I would feel more comfortable if we made this referral to Mr. Thal. And I know Carlisle Wortman is very capable. They handled our master plan. They're wonderful at planning. But if this is an ordinance, that's the law. And it's something that might need to be defended in the future. I feel like it's important that the attorney, it's law, the attorney should put it in law form. And it might even be financially advantageous to us. I can't remember what Carlisle Wortman's hourly rates were, but Mr. Thal is surprisingly low rate for an attorney of his caliber. So that would be my comment as opposed to Carlisle Wortman. I would suggest that we make the changes, submit the changes to Rob Thal.
Thank you, Kathy. I attended one meeting where Rob Thal was there discussing the open space preservation ordinance. I found that he lacked a perspective of the success of open space preservation ordinances. He was careful to say that you could do this or that, and you shouldn't do this or that, but it was all related to the legality. Of the 23 comments he made, none of them suggested that we should or shouldn't do anything. Carlisle Wortman has a perspective in detail in southeastern Michigan, probably all over the state, has been working in this field for years and years, 20 years that I know of. And I think they can advise us more specifically on the effectiveness of the ordinance. Will it work? Is it worth having on our books? Rob Thal can keep us out of jail, but Carlisle Wortman can make us successful. Kathy?
Well, I think a lot like just what you said earlier, though, I think what we're talking about here is policy decisions, kind of like Thal said. He's going to tell us what's legal and what's not, but the 5 people on the board, we've got to make this policy decision. And, you know, like I said, Kyle Wortman is great at what they do. I don't know if Carol's on the call, but I remember we had Carlisle Wortman do an ordinance for us. And, you know, they have, they work with a wide range of municipalities. So what they brought to us wasn't really applicable to us as Sylvan Township. And they kind of, you know, brought it off. It took a lot of work and whittling it down. So, you know, I hear what you're saying, but, you know, at the point where we're turning this over to someone, these decisions should be made. We know we need to have it. As Kurt said, you know, it's state law, we have to have this. The details are to work out by us. And then I would prefer it to send it to the attorney to be put in ordinance form.
Sandy?
I think that's what I was going to say, Kathy, that Carlisle Wortman can work through it. And then we send it to the attorney before anything, before we do anything.
So what would Carlisle Wortman at this point be looking at for us after we fill in the details? You know, I'm unclear on what they're to advise us on whether what the decision we made was a good one or.
Yes. My motion reads, and it's getting dark, but my camera is keeping me alight, but not my writing. To correct the identified typographical errors, put the proposed ordinance in ordinance form, advise the township on how to handle water and sewer, and advise the township on the potential effectiveness of the ordinance. And, you know, once we are comfortable with what Carlisle Wortman produces, we could certainly have Rob Thal review it again.
So I thought we had the water and sewer. I thought one meeting that we had Mr. Thal at, in fact, I think that was perhaps that September 23rd meeting where the minutes were, anyway, I think it was that meeting where there were 2 motions, and one was that someone was going to have Mr. Thal, and he was at that meeting, put in language to protect the township in the private well and septic. Is that what you're talking about? And I felt like he felt like that was a boilerplate thing. Like
That's part of it.
different ones. So I would prefer to take that from the lawyer rather than the planners if he's got something already. I just don't know. I think that's our failing is, you know, we talked a little bit about this, is I don't know who, the who of everything, who took that to Thal, but I know that was our discussion in the board's motion and intent was to have him put in that language. And maybe, you know, Rod, Kurt, you guys were at that meeting, maybe.
Yes.
No, that's what
The language in the minutes was, probably the language wasn't in the minutes, but as you said, someone was going to ask Rob Thal the question about water and sewer. Well, I have yet to meet someone in this office, so it never got done.
Well, it was at that meeting and Rod and Kurt, I don't know if you guys remember as well, but he was at the meeting and we talked about the protection of the township for water and sewer. And he said there's language we can put in there. So, I think, I mean, I will be willing to email Mr. Thal tomorrow and say, can you send us that language? I don't think it's rocket science. It felt like at the time, and again, whoever else was at that meeting, that was going to be something easy for him to do, and they have done in other instances.
Yes, and we have a second opinion from an attorney that I have used that says there's no need for that language in the ordinance.
But that's not what the township attorneys told us. When I'm acting as a township board member, I can only take the advice of for me, I do that maybe is what your attorney told you, but I'm bound by, he is the attorney for us, as far as I'm concerned. But I appreciate that other attorneys feel differently.
And he didn't say that we had to have the ordinance. The issue was, we felt we needed legal language to protect us from the potential liability. He never produced it.
Right. And I wonder, who was going to follow up on that, at the time. And I think we've talked a little about this. Maybe we should be more clear when we're making motions, who is going to do the follow up on these things. Because again, now we're months down the road, and it was kind of probably, it felt like it was going to be a slam dunk. It felt like it was going to be the easy thing to do. And now we're months down the road and nobody did it. And now it's as though it didn't happen. I don't know.
Well, that's why I would like Cartman Grant's opinion on, is this an essential part of the ordinance? Can we ignore it? Do we need to further consultation from our attorney? I said Cartman Grant. It's Carlisle Wortman. I worked with some consultants, it was probably only 30 years ago, named Cartman Grant. And for some reason, they stick in my head. But I think Carlisle Wortman can advise us on all these issues very constructively. Sandy?
Right. And I think going to them will help. Getting feedback from them will help to make this ordinance more successful. And again, Kathy, it's going to be run by fall before anything else happens to it. You just tell Carlisle Wortman what you want to have in it, in the ordinance, and they'll put it in there.
But I think we can kind of do that now. Like, we just have to decide, the 5 members on the board, what we want in the ordinance, and we put it in there and send it to Thal. So, I'm not against having more eyeballs on it. I feel like it's getting more expensive, and now it's already several months further down the line because we're sending it through 2 consultants instead of, so, if part of it is to correct typos, that feels like that's pretty easy work, and we pay any consultant more than $100 an hour, which is more than, 3 of us make combined. So I'm just thinking about the dollar signs too, if we, if we can make the typo errors, if it gets put in ordinance form, if Rob Thal can send us language to protect water and sewer, and then the effectiveness is really a matter of opinion, I think. And, we have to have it. So we're going to make the best it can be and run it by the attorney to make sure he can defend it. That's my opinion. I'm, whatever we need to do, but it feels like more time and money.
And I think that Rob Thal can do the same thing as Carlisle Wortman, and we don't get hit double. And he will make it legal.
Oh, I'm confident he'll make it legal. I don't think he's a good advisor on this issue.
Because, Dave, as you said, it's all about policy making, and that he has said a number of times, that's the responsibility of the board. So he's not going to be giving you ideas. You as a board have to have the ideas. Then he will help make sure that what it is that you want to do is legal.
And Carlisle Wortman can give us ideas because they're more experienced, they're more broadly experienced, they're experienced over time, they're professionals on this subject. I would like to hear their suggestions because they're the best in town. Any other comments?
Just a question here from Kurt. Do we have any idea of what Carlisle Wortman would charge for this?
No. One comment I did hear is that Carlisle Wortman employs a sliding scale where they tailor their fee structure to the nature of the work and the character of the township. That sounded good to me. Because our work is simple and our township is small.
True.
So we've had the planning commission spend numerous hours on this. We've had Thal spend numerous hours on this. We have something that we can approve that has been approved by Thal. We continue to delay on that. Now we're talking about spending money with Carlisle Wortman. And then when they're done, then it has to go back to legal again. I mean, it just seems to me where I don't understand what we're trying to do here. We've got something from the planning commission. Let's approve that and move on with life. Why are we making this so difficult? Do we not like what the planning commission gave us?
Yeah, I don't. It was crummy. It would have been ineffective.
It's one vote.
Any further discussion? Scott, I see your hand and you'll have an opportunity to speak at the end of the board's discussions.
Well, I didn't have the opportunity during because I was shut out.
Rod, could you? Thank you. Any further discussion by the board? I'll call the question then, and I'm going to have to turn my lights on. I'll read the motion again. I move that we retain Carlisle Wortman Associates to correct and identify the identified typographical errors, put the proposed ordinance in ordinance form, advise the township on how to handle water and sewer, and advise the township on the potential effectiveness of the organization. Branham,
No.
Brooks, yes. Kennedy,
No.
Kosick,
No.
Schultz,
Yes.
motion fails to pass. Would anybody like to make a motion to do something else?
Yes, Kurt would.
Kurt,
All right,
I
hold
would-
on a second. Hold on a second. I'm still writing from the old one. Sandy was a yes. Okay. Thank you.
The motion that I'd like to make is to accept what it is that the planning commission delivered to us. I don't know if it was 4 months ago or 6 months ago. That has legal approval from fall and get the ordinance in compliance with state law. And then if we want to do things differently, address those separately. But my motion is to accept what the planning commission worked on and present it to the board of trustees.
okay,
second
I think that's this. I can work with Kathleen. This was presented to the board on August 11th. Um, And
Is that the? Yeah,
the one you sent around to us, Kathleen.
right. So this is the one we looked in August. I think I might have to look at Carol's email. Carol had a pile of documents too. I just want to make sure that the one from August was indeed the last one. And this is the one then in September, we said we were gonna have fall put in the water and sewer language. And that never happened. So I think, yeah. So
Any
does that
further
move
discussion
for-
on Kurt's motion?
Well, I would honestly have to refresh my memory. So this one had no minimum lot size, is that correct? And it had a 10% bonus density. And then was our intention to include anything about the water and sewer for our motion in September?
We could still assume that the motion that was passed back whenever, still valid. And we should ask for Thal's opinion. The August 11th had a lot width of no less than 50% of the underlying zone, an area no less than 40% of the underlying zone, a coverage maximum of 20%, a floor area ratio of 20%, a variety of setbacks, and the bonuses were 1 unit for the first 20 acres and 1 per additional 20 acres to a maximum of 5. But you don't have to copy all that down, Kathleen. It's all in the ordinance from the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I'm not writing it down. I'm looking at the ordinance right now as well.
Yep.
So
Any further discussion?
just
Of
that,
Kurt's
I just want to
motion.
say that it's been a really long time on this. And so, yeah, it's been a long time and
Yeah,
we've
it's
been
been
through
a-
lots of iterations. So it's kind of tough to even just like make sure that I know what I'm voting on right now, because it would be nice if we had a chart or something that was easy to read. I don't know if others have it all in their head, what all these different iterations were. So, I mean, I have no comment. I'm just gonna look through here real quick.
Well, if my memory keeps me honest, Kurt's motion is to refer it back to fall. Is
No,
that correct, Kurt?
no, my motion was to, for the Board of Trustees to accept what the Planning Commission gave to us, the final product from the Planning Commission.
Any other comment from the board? I would be very frustrated to work 2 years to pass an ordinance that will be of no effect. But such is life.
Well, I would have liked to, I'm sorry that, you know, the prior motion I would have supported had it had the attorney in there. And so I'm sorry, I like the other, I'm not, I feel like there's maybe some things that I felt I would like to see different in the Planning Commission one. I think our current ordinance, I think, has no lot size. So this has these lot size restrictions, the bonus density, setbacks. It all becomes a blur, to be honest.
One option, Kathleen, would be, I would amend my motion to following the presentation by Carlisle Wardman, that we refer it to Rob Thal.
Right, I know. Yeah, I remember that part of it.
Well, it wasn't part of my original motion. I could make it a second motion.
Oh, I see. Well, and I thought,
Kurt has a motion.
right,
We would have to defeat Kurt's motion first.
yeah.
Any other conversation on Kurt's motion? Schultz,
No,
Kosick,
Yes.
Kennedy,
No,
Brooks, no. Branham,
Yes,
motion passes 3-2. No, sorry, motion defeated 3-2.
mhm.
I make a new motion that we retain Cartman Grant to correct the identified typographical errors, put the proposed ordinance in ordinance form, advise the township on how to handle water and sewer, and advise the township on potential effectiveness of the ordinance. Following which, we will refer the proposed ordinance to Rob Thal for legal review.
I
Any
second,
discussion on that motion?
I second,
Sandy,
I second.
thank you. Any further discussion?
So I just want to say again, I'm not sure why we're referring it to Carlisle if we're going to put it to the attorney. And we don't know what Carlisle Wortman is going to charge us an hourly rate either. I mean, that would be nice to know. Ultimately, if it's going to go back in front of all, I don't want to be a road bump on this, but also, I mean, we really need to do something here. Don't know that I'm prepared to do, I don't want to hold it up. I don't know that Carlisle Wortman's necessary. My important thing is that fall see it at water and sewer language, get in there that we made a motion about a long time ago. So those are my comments.
Okay, I'm trying to visualize how to put this in the or in the motion, but let's say this. I move we obtain a proposal from Carlisle Wortman Associates to correct the identified typographical errors, put the proposed ordinance in ordinance form, advise the township on how to handle water and sewer, and advise the township on potential effectiveness of the ordinance. Once I have a proposal from Carlisle Wortman, I'll bring it to the board for their approval before we proceed. Does that make you comfortable, Kathy? Starlink dies before our very eyes. Let's wait for Kathy to become. Kathy, can you hear us? No.
she just fell off.
Kurt, if you want to speak without Kathy hearing you.
Yeah, you keep saying water and sewer, and I'm not sure that that's applicable. Are we talking well and septic?
Liability. It's the liability that the township does not want to accept any liability for water and sewer or whatever disposal systems are put into a development. It's protecting us. It's liability.
Well, I understand that, but we keep saying sewer, and I don't think we want to say water.
No, we don't.
We
mean
can
that.
say well and, I think you want to say well and septic.
Right.
Or we
You're
could say
correct.
well
Yeah.
and wastewater management.
Yeah.
Poor Kathleen and Starlink having a bad night.
Hello?
Naturally, I'm going to wait a long time to let Kathleen rejoin the meeting because she was my third yes vote.
I don't know what I went to.
Here she comes.
Sorry about that,
Hey.
everybody.
Can we blame that on Starlink?
Maybe so. Might have been one of those blips. So I apologize.
I'll write a note. I'll write a note to my buddy Ellen.
Okay, so when I got disconnected, you had amended your motion to obtain a
Yes, and
proposal.
Kurt made a suggestion that I remove the word sewer and replace it with wastewater. So to rephrase it, I move that we obtain a proposal from Carlisle Wortman Associates to correct the identified typographical errors, put the proposed ordinance in ordinance form, advise the township on how to handle water and wastewater, and advise the township on the potential effectiveness of the ordinance, and then have the proposed ordinance reviewed by Rob Thal.
And
Any
this
further
is for the
discussion on-
version 3 that was, is that right?
Yes,
We're talking for version 3.
that's the version that Rob Thal commented on.
No, that is your version.
I didn't catch who that was.
Version 3.
Why couldn't we send the one that the PC approved and have the language put in for well and septic?
Well, if my motion fails, you can make a motion to that effect.
So it's difficult, and I hear what the residents are saying, and Mr. Brooks and Patrick, I respect you both a whole lot. I know what they're saying, that maybe it feels a little not right. The version 3 that came forward, I wish that we could have like a fourth version. We had from the BPC. There's a lot of stuff in there I support. There's things I'd like different. The version 3 has, to some a taint on it now. So it's hard to, it's hard to then support that and move that forward with that. So I feel like I'm in a hard spot right now. I want to support, I want more than what the PC was recommending. If I'm, approving, moving forward with version 3, not sure that that's, just not sure that that's, something I'm comfortable with doing the way that it is right now, the way it's, looked at by the public. So I feel, I feel like it's a tough spot to be in. It's embarrassing that we've left it so long. I don't want it to linger. I want to make a good decision. I'm not sure I feel great about the 2 that are proposed right now at this time.
Any further discussion by the board?
Just Kurt, one more question. Has the public had a chance to review and comment on version 3?
Nope.
Thank you.
I don't post it on Free Sylvan or not.
That's not where you do it.
That's
Bad
more
answer.
public than anything else we do.
No.
Wrong answer.
No. No. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem for me too. And I think, what we've talked about is if there's, lots of deviations, it would need to go back to the planning commission. So,
Rob Fall did
yeah,
not, I'm
right.
sorry. Rob
Yeah,
Fall
and
did
I-
not
you know-
indicate that any of the changes we made needed to go back to the planning commission other than water and wastewater. Any other discussion by the board? Okay, one last reading of the motion. I move that we obtain a proposal from Carlisle Wortman Associate to correct the identified typographical errors, put the proposed ordinance in ordinance form, advise the township on how to handle water and wastewater, and advise the township on the potential effectiveness of the ordinance. Following their presentation, we would refer it to Rob Thal for further review. Schultz,
Yes.
Kosick,
Yes.
Kennedy,
No,
Kathleen's a no.
yeah, I guess I'm a no.
Brooks is a yes. Branham,
No.
motion still passes with 3.
Did you get Sandy? Did Sandy?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Any other business that people would like to bring before the board tonight?
So got my hand up.
We're not open to public comment yet. This is still a board meeting. It appears that we're going to have a couple openings on the Sylvan Township Water and Sewer Authority. They're meeting tomorrow. I've seen one letter or email of resignation. I've only heard that there is a second. I would ask the board to appoint me to fill any openings that occur on the Sylvan Township Water and Sewer Authority. Is there a second?
Dave, do you mean to fill an opening, that you fill an opening permanently or just temporarily?
Permanently.
Mm-mm. 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 Mm-mm.
Okay, the motion dies for lack of a second. Last issue I'll bring up tonight is initiation of cooperation with the city of Chelsea to explore opportunities to improve the quality of service and or reduce the cost of service related to our water and sewer systems. The city of Chelsea felt that the Sylvan Township Board needed to assure the city that they were participating in the exploration of cooperation in good faith. I think I sent everybody a statement of cooperation. Obviously, no one's in the mood to pass anything tonight other than related to open space. But I'll make the motion anyhow. I move that on this day, Tuesday, 16th March, 2021, that this statement of cooperation be approved and signed. Is there a second? The motion dies for a lack of a second. If I can get back to our agenda. I now recognize
Oh, wait, if I may, can I jump in real
Kathleen?
quick?
Sure.
Okay. I just want to mention that we have three declaration of interest forms submitted by residents. Those are the forms we've asked residents to fill out. We'll keep on file. They indicate on that form what committees they'd be willing to serve on. So we have three of those currently, and I've mailed them around, I know a couple times. But I think, we have residents who've expressed interest who would be willing to serve. So if there are truly vacancies and we know there are vacancies, then I think it's appropriate that someone, reach out to these individuals. This is what we said we do. So we have, a couple people who might be willing. And then that form, I think we updated and put onto the website. That's available on the sylvan-township.org website. And I also want to say that I appreciate the discussions with Chelsea, and I wholeheartedly support cooperation and a regional approach to what we have, utilities and things. I think it's high time we cooperate and work with neighbors. So personally, I do support that. I don't know if the cooperation of whatever the term of it was, I don't know if that was something that I was interested in signing, but I'm certainly willing to say this at a board meeting and reach out to the people I know at the city that I'm happy to support whatever mutually beneficial solutions we can find. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. However, the dreaded someone reared their ugly head again to reach out to recruit people. Anybody volunteer to be someone?
Sorry,
Someone dies. Sandy,
recruit people for what? For board openings or?
openings on the Sylvan Township Water and Sewer Authority Board.
But we already have two people who have come to us, or three people who have come to us and said, when there's a vacancy on a board, I'm willing to serve. So we don't need to search for anyone. I've emailed those declaration forms around. Someone just needs to pick up the phone and call this resident or these residents, depending how many vacancies there are, and call them and say, hey, I know in September you put in an interest form. Are you still interested in serving? So we already have three people we can contact right away.
I'll do it, Kathy.
Okay.
Thank you, Rod. Any further discussion by the board? Can I open the meeting to public comment? Scott's been chomping at the bit for an hour. Recognize Scott.
Thank you. I'm kind of curious. I'm coming from the outside because I admittedly have not attended every meeting. But why isn't Carlisle, Wortman, or Thal at this meeting? Why aren't they in attendance to answer the questions that would move this forward a little bit more? Secondly, Carlisle Wortman was paid a substantial amount of money to do the master plan. And if this open space ordinance is missing because of their oversight, they owe it to us free of charge to make the corrections, to make the updates. Maybe there's something there that, David, I hear you laugh, but to readily just say, hey, let's get a quote from them. Sometimes these people can be embarrassed into doing something for free because you tell them you should have had it the last time because they left an obvious hole in what they prepared for us in our master plan. So I don't think it's that funny to at least try and do something like that. if they should have done that. But I don't see why they weren't, should have been connected to this meeting. You know, I mean, there's a whole lot of questions and none of them got answered because everybody's talking about referring to them, and referring to them. You know, I know it's a lot of work and it's 2 years in running, and that's my second big opinion. I don't care if it's 3 years in running or 5 years in running. There's not a problem that always has to be answered. There's some problems that cannot be answered, cannot be solved, cannot be put on the ballot. And somehow there's forces within this township that have coupled together to create a situation that makes it sound like it must be settled now. It must be settled tonight. It must be settled next week, this month, 3 months from now, 3 months ago. You know, when I got into government, it was an understanding that, you know, your ordinances are your ordinances. And because one person comes up and challenges them, doesn't mean you got to light your hair on fire and run around and solve them. You thank the people, thank you, and you wait. You don't look to make a change until it starts affecting most of your township. And right now what I hear is you're debating a problem and trying to solve a problem that is only affecting one person or two persons. And those two persons have the same agenda. And I find that rather uncomfortable. Problems that need to be solved usually are those problems that start adding up to, David, I get your point. Take your sign down. Usually your problem is when you have people that think there must be a solution. We're not at that point yet. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Scott. Steve Kiss.
Thank you. I tried to get in earlier, but I was having some computer problems. Appreciate the opportunity for the comments, but for open space, I think we need to do the absolute minimum possible to meet state law. No bonuses. Pushing through the open space, and I'm going to include a little bit about STR at this time, and pushing through both those at this time reminds me of a Rahm Emanuel quote, to never let a crisis go to waste. I attended many in-person meetings regarding open space, and those of you who were there observed an overwhelming majority of residents in attendance were against the open space ordinance as Mr. Zieske was presenting it. Now with Zoom meetings, there's much less opportunity to voice our opinions, and many are not attending. So those few in favor think they have a good opportunity to push it through at this time. It's a solution in search of a problem. Recently, I was wondering why Mr. Zieske is pressing so hard on both of the open space and STR. He has made these issues joined at the hip. If both the open space and STR pass with shorter stays and unrelated people, we would have a real problem. It could be catastrophic to the stability of this community. If these pass as he wishes, this township could be full of small, cheap houses with countless transient persons coming in and out of the township. It's not good for the township. We could end up and have many of these small hamlets throughout the township. Passage of this ordinance would actually encourage developing in this area because it would provide for cheap lodging and housing. Thank you.
Dave, we had a phone down here that wanted to speak to 475-8173.
Yep, that's me. This is Carol, and I want to mention the fact that the Planning Commission had worked really long and hard on this ordinance. And I do want to say I think it could be a dangerous precedent that would be set by the fact that Supervisor Brooks and Patrick worked on this together. And I find it's disingenuous for Supervisor Brooks to refer to this ordinance as the one that came from Thaw, because that is quite misleading. It did not come from Thaw. It was his version, amalgamation of what he and Patrick put together. And this version did have Thal's comments. However, there was a lot of the Planning Commission ordinance was deleted from B3. So I think it should be sorted out. What ordinance are you referring? Is it going to be the Planning Commission ordinance, or is it going to be B3, which is the Brooks-Ziske ordinance? And I think the public should be clear. It lacks the transparency that I think that the citizens of Sylvan Township deserve.
Thank you, Carol. I think Patrick had his hand up next.
Yes, thank you, Dave. First of all, guilty as charged. Going back in history a little bit, the way this thing started was 2 years ago when I submitted a text amendment proposal to the open space ordinance. That is a perfectly legitimate thing to do for a resident to submit a text amendment proposal. The reason why you have a planning commission version in front of you and a V3, et cetera, is because in November of 2019, Robert Thal submitted a memo to the township advising me to rescind my text amendment application. And in place of that, he was going to develop another open space ordinance that had similar properties to it. He wrote a memo describing what he wanted to see in that ordinance. The ordinance that came from the Planning Commission is not consistent with Robert Thal's own memo. It was not consistent with the agreement to rescind my text amendment application. And I have every right in the world to submit another text amendment application tomorrow for consideration. There's nothing at all wrong with that. Neither is there anything wrong with me talking to the board about the same essentially proposals to any board member, David or anybody else. Now, the other things that are kind of laughable here, it's really funny. We got to put this in ordinance form and we got to correct the typos. Do you guys realize that Thal's draft that the Planning Commission sent up was equally not in ordinance form and had the exact same typos in it? Thal was actually commenting on his own typos, believe it or not. And that's how laughable this thing is right now. And to say all this other stuff, I don't know. We have people here saying they don't like high density development who live in high density development themselves, which is really weird, really weird. We say this is not a problem in the township. Well, I live on Bush Road right now. I see what's going on Bush and Pierce right now, where those homes are going in on the 2 acre lots with the long snaking driveways. It is happening. That used to be farmland. It is happening. It is being chopped up. We like that. We don't want to give anybody any other options. We want to pass an ordinance that's basically completely ineffective just to say we comply with state law. Again, at some point, I can make an up or down vote with the board on an effective ordinance because I can submit another text amendment. That's stupid. And no, you can't go on for 5 years. Then the clock starts ticking. It's a 120-day clock. That's the policy of the township. I was probably a fool to take that bait and switch to rescind my original text amendment application because now we ended up with this thing. Go back and read Robert Thal's memo. See what he said in his memo. That's what it was supposed to be, not what the Planning Commission coughed up. You guys and the board are the policymakers, not the Planning Commission. I could go on about the other nonsense I heard tonight, but I won't.
Thank you, Patrick. Your time is up. I lost track of who's first, second, third. But we haven't heard from Dawn Kaplis, so I'll pick her.
Okay, here we are. This is not Dawn, it's her husband, Tom. I've been sitting in through this whole meeting, and what you guys did tonight smells like last week's dead fish. I agree with what Mr. Kiss said, and I agree with what Mr. The other gentleman said, and I also agree with what Carol said. You guys took a unanimous submission from the Planning Commission and said it wasn't good enough, but yet you went and allowed the supervisor and the applicant to change it. Now, what you should have done is either is past what the planning commission gave you. And if the applicant doesn't like it, let them, he has the right to submit another text amendment and pay the appropriate fees. Right now, the expense is all being borne by the taxpayers. You're going to go to Carlisle Workman, and you're going to go back to Mr. Thal to review something the planning commission voted unanimously on. And we are going to pay for it, not Patrick. He's not going to pay for that. We are going to pay for it. That's wrong. There's a lot of political collusion going on. And I agree with Mr. Kiss. When we had public, there wasn't a lot of people that were in favor of this in the township. So you guys can take that, put it in your pipe and smoke it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplis. Dave Reinhardt.
Just a couple things to say. One of the points that's usually brought up is, well, all we're hearing from is Patrick and Christian, and they're the only two people who have a vested interest in that. I have a vested interest as a resident of Sylvan Township and a human being that I would like to live. If my wife died, I didn't need a big house, in a smaller home with some open space. The development that Patrick has proposed fits that. Also, it's just not the traffic and all the other points that are brought up. I'm one of the neighbors. I'm for it. I'm for having Sylvan Township move forward rather than being hamstrung. We have money. I would certainly like to live in a smaller space that had open space. And I just don't understand the reticence and vitriol that is going on here for people who don't want to live like everybody else. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, David. Christian.
I guess I'll just say that when I hear people getting angry, I hear people being passionate about their community, and I just appreciate that. That being said, I think I'm curious. I'm curious as to what Carlisle Wortman will charge, because I've taken the time and looked at every single open space ordinance within Washtenaw County and compared them all, and it took a long time. And I did it because I'm really passionate about this. But I'm curious what they're going to say there is going to be their cost. But ultimately, it's up to the board about what you all want, and they might provide a few different options. But what I heard today that I really want to echo is that the Planning Commission's draft made the original ordinance a lot worse. All due respect to the Planning Commission, I know they were trying their hardest and they've got their own values that may not represent everyone in Sylvan Township, but making the lot size larger, they made it 240% larger than the original ordinance. And if you ask any land preservation specialist, you don't have to ask me, maybe I'm too close to this. Ask any other land preservation specialist. Large lots destroy farmland, they destroy natural land. So getting those lots as tight as you can get them, you can preserve more land for future generations permanently. These are permanent conservation easements. And I just want to also applaud the conversation that I heard tonight around getting ahead of development. See the patterns coming up. You see some really dense developments coming up. And if you wait till the development pressure's here already, and it's already started, it will be too late. And it takes a long time to really thoroughly do this. So I really appreciate, this board and the Planning Commission and everyone in this township for putting in the amount of effort it takes to do an ordinance like this. So anyway, I hope that whether or not, whatever version you all go with, blah, 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 there's lots of different things, but make it flexible, make the lot sizes like they originally were with no minimum lot size, make it flexible for landowners, give them a little bonus so that more people preserve land this way. Because what I'm hearing is people really like Sylvan Township's views. They like seeing big acreages of farmland and natural land. Me too. That's why I want to move there. But I also need affordable housing. And I'm also hear some people that don't like these small hamlets of affordable houses because who knows what types of people will come in. I heard that at one of these meetings, which made me feel unwelcome. So I'm not sure, maybe I won't move to Sylvan Township, but I hope to. And I hope these lands are preserved. And I think they will be with an effective ordinance like this. So anyway, I really appreciate the passion because I see a lot of people who really care about this land in Sylvan Township. So appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Christian. Amanda?
Oh, hello. This is Ian Ballard. I live in Sylvan Township. I just wanted to say that I feel like I've attended multiple meetings for the planning and zoning when Patrick had brought the issue up. And it was clear at the time that he was not in favor of what they had recommended to the board. I think that the procedure really hasn't been followed and that the board should have voted either up or down on what was sent to them back in September and given the Planning and Zoning Commission direction as to what they were looking for if they wanted the changes. The board, when the Planning and Zoning Commission is there to produce those things to the board isn't the Planning and Zoning Commission. If we're not going to use them, then why do we have them? So I would recommend that because of the optics of how this third version came out, that it go back and they be given a chance to maybe make some of the changes that Patrick has recommended or make the changes that the board has recommended, but to use the Planning and Zoning Commission for what they're there for. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. I guess Scott's next.
Yeah, I would echo what Ian Ballard just said, and also Tom Kaplis. You've got a procedure that you've got to follow, and you can't circumvent that procedure. The Planning Commission receives whatever offer from Patrick or whomever and judges it worthy or not. And to circumvent that, Dave, was not very kosher on your part. It should have been focused back through the Planning Commission. If the Planning Commission proposes it to the board then does their job and to recognize whether it has value or not and adopts it or not. It's pretty simple, but I think, it may not have been your intention, Dave, to have the optics as it has turned out. And it's one of the problems we have with Zoom right now. And I hope we're all over this Zoom, by June or something, but you got to follow the system. We have a plan, we have a system. It has to be followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. This could go on forever. I think I may have to invoke the 3-minute limit and ask people not to double dip. We're starting to be repetitive on the comments. And so I will let Patrick and Mr. Kaplis go a second time around, but that's the end of public comment unless it's somebody we have not heard from.
Can I ask a question real quick, Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Rod, are you taping this? Because my recorder just ran out of space or batteries or something, so I'm no
Yes.
longer going to be recording.
Yes, I got it.
Thank you, Rod.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaplis.
Yeah,
You're muted.
can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Reiterate that what you should do tonight before you close this meeting of the board is pass what the Planning Commission sent to you. And if Mr. Z and his business partner don't want to reapply to change it again and go right back through the process. Because right now you're spending our money. not his money. And what you're trying to do, Mr. Brooks, it seems like, is give him something he can live with, not necessarily what's good for the whole township. Now, having said that to you as a criticism, let me say this. I commend you very, very much for hearing that you're going to put 70 acres into a conservation, what'd you call it, a conservation easement? That's a noble thing to do, and you're to be commended for that. But what you're doing here tonight isn't noble at all.
Patrick,
Yes, I need to answer some of the other comments again. There is nothing improper with the board changing what the planning commission has sent up before passing a version of an ordinance. The facts of the situation, which probably just about everybody in here knows, is that the majority of the planning commission doesn't want this. Period. You could send it to the planning commission 10 times. You're going to get the same result. In fact, some of the comments on here said that basically, we just don't want this. But the fact of the situation also is that the township board makes the policy ultimately. The planning commission is in an advisory role. The township board does not have to pass what the planning commission sends up. That is false. And just about everybody in here knows that's false. And again, there's nothing wrong with a resident, even somebody who has an interest in a development, talking to a board member about the ordinance. I could just as easily send up another text amendment request. What's the problem is that the planning commission pulled a bait and switch operation on me when they asked me to rescind my text amendment.
No.
okay, I'm sorry, Dan Russell, but all the citizens have had a chance to speak. I'm going to close public comment and open board meeting comment. Okay, I would make one comment.
Oh, go ahead. I want to say I'm not really comfortable with closing out public comment. And I know if Mr. Russell was to speak again, we let several other people speak again. And so I think it's a dangerous thing to end public comment before everyone has been exhausted. It's certainly something where we can say everyone only gets one turn to talk, but everyone should have 3 minutes, and where we set a precedent that people have been allowed to talk twice. I would feel, that way if it was anyone. So that's all I have to say right now.
I agree.
Okay, but if you see all the hand, well, another hand has popped up. This could go on the rest of the night.
So it's a meeting. Jesus.
So I think I'm going to stick to my guns, and public comment is closed. In the future, I will make sure that a citizen only gets their 3 minutes at the start of the meeting and their 3 minutes at the end of the meeting. And we minimize the repetitiveness. We're in board comment, and I thought I saw Kurt's hand.
Yeah, Dave, I don't believe Dan Russell had a chance to comment on the second public comment period. I know he did in the first, but
He did.
that's
Any other recollections along those lines?
Other than Ed Blisick.
Okay, so I hear Kathleen, I see Kathleen talking, but can't hear her.
Oh, sorry. I was writing down, let's see, Mr. Cooper, Steve Kiss, Carol, Patrick, Tom Capeless, Dave Reinhardt, Christian Smith. I haven't seen Ian Ballard, Mr. Cooper, Mr. Capeless, Patrick. That's who I have down for the second public comment. No, Mr. Russell.
So you do not have Dan Russell or Ed Blisick?
Not as a second time, no.
Okay.
Not as.
I now recognize Dan.
Thank you, everybody, for that. I appreciate it. I just want to say, I think it's just two things. I built a commercial building in Pittsfield Township, and I attended 2 years of Pittsfield Township Planning Commission board meetings, and then I've been attending the Sylvan Township Planning Commission and board meetings for 3 years plus, and I've never seen the supervisor and a resident team up and be so headstrong to pass anything before. And if anyone knows anything about Pittsfield Township, man, you know that's like Crazyville for their meetings. And so just going back to the optics of this thing, it's just something smells, and it's giving me heartburns, and it's gonna play out. I don't know when, I don't know where, I don't know how, but I mean, this just really smells. And that's what I gotta say.
Thank you, Ed. Lost track. No,
Ed
that
Blissick.
was Dan. Ed Blissick now.
I'm trying to can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say on this public comment, I appreciate trying to control it, but I raised my hand when I realized that some people got to speak twice and some people didn't speak at all in the second period. So I'm glad that was recognized and corrected. I just want to remind the board that you're here to represent all the taxpayers of Sylvan Township, not a select couple of people. And I didn't get to mention this the first time, but I too am concerned with the optics of how this third version of the ordinance come to play. I've also signed up for the Sylvan Township meeting notices, and I didn't get a meeting notice on this one. I saw this meeting in the Chelsea update. And I really think the ordinance needs to be distributed to the public so they can view the last version and have an opportunity to weigh in on it. I feel strongly that the majority of the township residents don't want to become a SIO township. We don't want to see high density development. I know some people have commented that they don't like what's going on in some of these 1 acre lots or even a 5 or 10 acre lot. Personally, I'd like to see a 5 acre lot and let somebody build a house on it that preserves some open space, or a 10 acre lot. I think that's far superior to have a nice home on 5 or 10 acres than to cram a bunch of small homes together in a tight space. And quite frankly, the public has no benefit from that open space that's preserved in this form of the ordinance. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, now we'll return to board comment. Do any of the board members wish to make a comment?
I will again address something Patrick said. Patrick said he has the right to talk with a board member. That's very true. But I don't think either one of you have the right to create an ordinance that benefits Patrick. That's all I got.
Okay, my closing comments are that a number of you speak as if you represent the entire township. I got elected by a majority of the township, and I've pledged to represent all of the members of the township. I think I'm acting in the best interest of the township, all of its citizens. I'm distracted by Scott. He's quite the comedian. I asked Patrick to help me write the ordinance because he was so deeply involved with it. I wrote it because I think it's the best open space preservation ordinance that Sylvan Township could have. It will work, and that's what I want. Any further comment from the board? I'd
I
entertain
just
a
wanted to
motion.
say that I do feel, I feel bad for Patrick because he's been waiting a long time. You know, when he put in the text amendment, we did make a decision that we needed to make the open space preservation ordinance better, more, compliant with state law. And so that decision was made for him to remove it. And the township at that time, the board made the decision that because it was not only going to be benefiting Patrick, it would benefit the township as a whole. That was the thought process behind saying, Patrick, take back your text ordinance. We're going to create a more compliant ordinance for everyone. So, I think that's how that came about. And, everyone here on the board was elected by the residents, majority or not, so I want to say that I think we all feel like we're trying to act in the best interest of the residents. So that is all.
Any other comments from the board? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Kurt, so
Motion.
moved.
Rod moves, we adjourn. A second.
Kurt will second.
Kurt seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
All right. I think we should do a roll call vote, but I'll,
Okay,
Go
just to
ahead.
adjourn. See if I can remember everybody's name. Branham,
Yes.
Brooks, yes. Kennedy,
yes.
Kosick,
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Thank you all. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
See
Dave.
you.